across the world, especially in the Gulf. Okay, Gulf region. Places in Iran, yes, that's of course there. Places Al Udeid. Why is this the base? So, two more things. Bordering countries. There is an app called World Map Quiz. This app or any such app, if there are any um, latest versions of any maps, I would want you guys to download it, play like a quiz or play like a game in your free time every day for an entire year, so that you can actually mug up entire world map, especially the Middle East. Um, what else? Middle East, Central Asian nations, areas around the Mediterranean Sea, Southeast, especially the Indonesia and even the VLC, that is Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. All these areas you can, over a period of time, mug up, so that you know the boundaries, Gulf, Straits, all this in the Middle East, Mediterranean region will again and again and again appear in news. I want you to mug up the entire countries, seas, straits, gulfs, bays, everything in the same particular order, so that you get any question from that area, you are able to do it well. Anyway, moving on. Any other news that is worthy? No, I don't think so. Okay, you can use this as a case study. Pune school among the four world shortlisted for the world's best school prize. I'm not going to explain this article. How do I want you to think on this article? Now, world's best school. What is the definition of best here according to the survey? On what metrics or what parameters? I want you to take down this homework. It's not like you just came here, saw, and left. Please take this homework seriously. What are the parameters? And based on this, compare with how official policy. Do we have any official survey on well-being of schools? If no, what should we do? If yes, what are they? Ask questions like this. Okay? Next. Um, Again, it's like nothing new here. This one. This article. Critical minerals. What do you understand by critical minerals? This is the first question. Yes, anyone? What are rare earths? See, the usual mistake done by most aspirants is thinking that critical minerals and rare earths are one and the same. Rare earths refer to a group of 17 uh, you know uh, elements, or the periodic table, right? In the periodic table there are 17 elements, or I would say minerals, which are critical for energy transition. And China controls, or has, it's geographically gifted with 70% of the rare earths across the world. Unlike dependence on oil, where oil is found in different parts of the world, critical mineral access is controlled by China. If China decides to stop the supply, energy transition story will not actually be in India's favor. What is energy transition? We already discussed this, energy Atmanirbharta by 2047. That is, in the 100th year of independence, India wanted to have a self-sufficiency in energy. We don't want to depend on external countries. And this is the energy transition we're talking about, which has a twofold benefit. One is that we are self-sufficient, and the other thing is it is environmental friendly according to the latest technologies. But there are multiple challenges. One, if you are going for a lithium based e-vehicle transport system, the future of mobility depends on our access to this critical minerals like lithium. Where is lithium triangle? Lithium triangle. Okay, go to South America map. Take this as a homework. Write down lithium triangle. Where do you have lithium triangle? The difference between are all critical minerals rare earths? If not, what are they? Your activity, learn to draw world map in less than 45 seconds. Okay, learn to draw world map in 45 seconds. There are multiple YouTube videos on how to do this. Whenever you get any resource based questions, coal, iron, whatever it is, I want you guys to first learn how to draw that world map, and on the world map learn to represent all this critical minerals, all any geographical resources on the map. If you are witnessing any global conflict, you should be able to draw the map of that region at least in a rough way. It doesn't matter how bad your sketching skills are, they'll get better over a period of time. Okay? And this is the first skill you need to have, because in GS1 geography, if you want to talk about spatial distribution of resources, the only way you will effectively communicate is through a map. And if you are unable to draw a map, you will be at a disadvantage. So start from day one. Okay? Now, so the overall context of this article is China has been blocking critical mineral access to many countries across the world. Many years ago, when Japan realized the importance of these rare earth minerals, they decided to diversify. India reacted very late. India also has some critical minerals. I'm not saying rare earths, some critical minerals. There are other critical minerals also. In fact, China has been making pact with many African countries where you will find these critical minerals. So it's like history repeating all over again. Back then it was imperialism. Today it is debt trap diplomacy. Because in the post-World War era, we do not have a imperial tendency anymore because of the global regulations. We are witnessing a world where money and debt trap, where China gives money to any African country and controls their entire economic decisions using that as a leverage or a blackmail tool. Africa being one of the poorest nations in the world, but also the fastest growing economies, because when your baseline is very small, the opportunity to grow is multifold. It is difficult to let's say you are giving this CAT exam where everything is calculated in percentile. It is easy to move from 90 to 95 percentile, but to move from 99.9 percentile till 100 percentile is a very big challenge. So the developed economies will have to do something radically significant and innovative to plug that gap between 99.9 and 100. But that's not the case in Africa. So critical minerals is an opportunity for African countries and countries that are associated with China. But the problem is China is using it to their advantage. How is it going to impact India in its energy transition story? This is what you should be thinking. This is a larger theme, larger story where it will keep on evolving. It's not a one-time story where you look at one specific issue. And what lessons we can learn from Japan? Japan has in fact, coming back to the story, I was diverging from the story before. Coming back to the story, when China stopped, giving this critical mineral access to Japan, they diversified and they connected back to India, where you will find some resources. There's an organization called Kabil. What is this Kabil? Have a look. Japan went into, pacts with Kabil across the world. They diversified their global supply chains and they started accessing all these critical minerals for their advantage. India, even though it knew that this is going to harm, instead of moving towards Atmanirbharta, we just went on to export the raw materials required and we ended up in the same place that we are in now. Yesterday we spoke about a 5 frontier technology based survey where in all the fronts India was lagging behind: AI, semiconductor space, quantum computing, biotech space. In all these frontiers, India is lagging behind. Semiconductors being one of them. It's actually the worst performing of all the 5 indices. Why? Because India did not take a proactive stance. We are now reacting. After ChatGPT, other DeepSeek like models are coming to the front. The only effort that is done indigenously to create a large language model is from the side of the government. Why is it that the private sector is not interested in doing anything that is centered around India? Because they don't believe it is possible here. The ecosystem, which is the software required to leverage these critical minerals, is also not being developed, and we take pride in having the largest number of engineers. So this complex issue, which starts with resources, geography, IR, future of economy, science and technology, should be clubbed together, and that end point, the end result, which will create this lack of independence and again a cycle of dependence, should be the guiding point to understand all these individual topics. Clear, everyone? Moving on. Long story short, in this article, you will see two different contrasting articles in the same paper on side by side. India's foreign policy stance is realpolitik. What do I mean by that? Yesterday, or maybe a few days ago, realpolitik, we spoke about diplomacy, and we are talking about this again, realpolitik. What is the word that India uses to forward this ideology? Strategic autonomy. What is realpolitik? What is that? Realism is a political philosophy or a political doctrine wherein power is the ultimate dictating factor of any negotiation, and power is thinking about the autonomy of a sovereign nation. You take care of yourself first, nation first. Rest everything is later. Our needs first. It might look like a very selfish doctrine, but it is the most practical doctrine across the world. It might look like US is involving in global affairs everywhere, but that is their strategy of realpolitik. They want to control any and every place that will be benefiting their interest. Here you will see a concept called deep state. I want you to go and read what this deep state is. Okay? Deep state. Link this deep state to the end game strategy. End game strategy. Keyword. What is deep state? What is realpolitik? What is end game strategy? Link all of them together. In short, end game strategy is about the long term plan for a nation, a long term strategy to create stability for a nation, inspired by realpolitik through the deployment of a deep state. PSIR students will have to work a bit more on this, quote the thinkers, etc. Anyway, coming back. So the whole point of this article is, I'll simplify it in a very, because the backstory is explained in a very detailed manner. In order to appreciate what this article writer is saying, we need to look at it from a moral lens, moral philosophy. What is happening in the Middle East right now? Should we look at it and close our eyes, or should we condemn it? Because we want to take a stance and we want to be viewed as a moral force or a moral reckoning that will impact global politics. This is a moral question more than anything else. Should we close our eyes and move on, or should we stand up, take a stance, and be remembered in history for what we always stood for? The author says that we have to take a second chance. The article on the right side says the exact opposite. Morality is not just, see, that is not what he exactly says, but if you want to combine both these articles and come up with a organic view, morality doesn't come with statements, it comes with actions. Your thoughts, words and actions should be in unity. Only then it will yield results. If you give a statement and not take responsibility, it's hypocrisy. The world, especially in the European Union context, is just that, hypocrisy. On one hand, they want to take a moral stance and condemn Russia-Ukraine war, and in the backyard they're shaking hands with Russia and taking oil from them, gas from them. They threaten Russia with sanctions, but when it comes to their needs, they are, negotiating. And they also have the audacity to say that India is the one that is taking cheap oil from Russia. Don't you think there are double standards here? Because in a world that is interdependent and globalized, you are bound to have these conflicts, moral dilemmas. And the only lens through which you should look at that issue is to contain that conflict to whatever extent it is possible without disturbing the sovereignty of any other nation. No nation wants to be dictated on what is right and what is wrong. In fact, they would want just the opposite. They either want countries to take their side or ask them to refrain. If you take sides, if India takes sides, either Israel side or Iran side, we will have repercussions. And actually, the world over is, the strategy adopted by countries across the world is a problematic stance because it will lead to an escalation of conflict. See what's happening now. US is involved. Now, after some days, if China gets involved because it has strategic interests in the region, it will lead to a global conflict. You have, actually the Middle East and the Balkan countries is where most of the conflict started across the world. The Second World War started because of this ideological warfare only. After the 1929 Great Depression, US didn't want to involve itself that much. But towards the later end, when the British, the United Kingdom is suffering, that's when US started getting involved because of the weapons industry in US. Because there's a global opportunity in war and conflict. The biggest benefit of this conflict is the weapons industry. So, is it okay? Is deterrence achieved only through weaponization? That's a dilemma we all have. Either handle that or this. So, in my opinion, if you want to give moral lectures, we should also have the capacity to stand by it. Only the powerful will have the ability to negotiate and set a standard. With great power comes great responsibility. And responsibility can only be taken up when you have power. What is power in this case? Leverage, access. We have neither right now, so we have to take care of ourselves. And that's what the summary of both these articles is like. Okay, moving on. Asia warming nearly twice as the global average. You will see this news, like there's nothing surprising here. Global warming, Asia being the hub where the largest deforestation and the fastest growth is happening, where consumption is increasing, the per capita emissions are going to increase, and therefore at a regional level the climate will get warmer. Who says this? World Meteorological Organization. This will create cyclones, landslides, heat waves, floods. When you are preparing a disaster management, there needs to go to this National Disaster Management Plan 2019. There is a structured, go to the index. It is a 314-page document. In this 314-page document, you will see for each of this cyclone, landslides, heat waves, floods, each of this disaster, you will see a strategy to mitigate it. That is what National Disaster Management Plan is about. Disaster management comes under which ministry? Home. It comes under Home Ministry. Okay. For each of this disaster, go to the index, you will see what is the risk, what are the structural mechanisms, non-structural mechanisms, and way forward. This is the format or the pro forma in which the entire plan is designed. For latest, um, you know, disasters like heat waves, cold waves, you have updated notifications on the website. Again in the same format. Why is this format like this? Because of the global plan called the Sendai framework. So if you were to prepare your short note for everything, you start with this, read each disaster like this. First read the geography aspect, then read the disaster management aspect. Combine them both and add them in a single note. If the question comes in GS1, read about geography. If the question comes on GS3, read about DM. Okay, this is how you can use it. And to quote your latest information, you will use articles like this and statistics like this. Clear? This is how you are supposed to use this article. Moving on. Do you want to write down or done? Write down. Done? Okay. Okay, this one. MOSPI or the Statistics Ministry, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. It's coming up with the first, see, this is a very, very, very important question, this topic. Whenever you see in news some initiative taken up by the government or some innovation from science and technology where the keyword is first ever. First ever. When you see this word first ever, always anticipate a question surrounding that. What is happening here? It will conduct a household survey. And the most important part is they're trying to see how technology will impact wages, impact of adoption of technology. Because we are in an era which is impacted by the fourth industrial revolution, that is AI. Why is this the first time that this is happening? Till now, we have this NSSO, National Sample Survey, taken up by ad hoc bodies like this. They did not have a large sample survey. Large samples were absent. So how much are we consuming, how much are we earning? We did not have a large scale data set. So we just extrapolated. This extrapolation was always, debated, contested by policymakers, and we didn't have a real-time data. In a world where we claim to be the skill capital of the world, we want to be the skill capital of the world, especially in the software. Don't you think it's high time that we get real-time data on any economics metric to take a better decision? It is in this context this news becomes very important, and keep a tab on this. Developments, this is just starting now, and the survey is going to happen next year. So by the time you are probably writing prelims, this news is going to be very important. Okay? Fine. Just take a look at this. PhonePe is launching an IPO. What is an IPO? In short, it wants to enter into the stock markets. Once a company enters into a stock market, it will gain the trust and confidence of consumers. This is historically proven. Now, a fintech industry's biggest problem is lack of trust. To expand beyond mere technology provision and to actually deal with banking services, etc., fintechs require support of banks, because RBI won't be giving them banking licenses because of various moral conflicts, etc., conflict of interest. That's a debate that we can take up separately. By launching an IPO, it gains trust. So when you are reading about the concept of trust, what are the various methods in different contexts to gain this trust? So that is the takeaway from this, the thought process that you can take away. So when you take trust as the glue that binds the society, or that binds as a social contract between an individual and the state, how does this trust manifest in various walks of life? Governance, through accountability and transparency. In economics, through market driven trust. In international relations, through actions and confidence building measures. In science and technology, through scientific temper. In society, through values. So the same concept of trust will manifest in multiple directions like this, and this phone pay example can be seen in the context of that. We are looking at both prelims and mains in a single news. Did you understand and follow me? Trust is the glue that binds the social contract between an individual and the state. You can see that element of trust through governance when the governance mechanisms are accountable and transparent. And in terms of economy, market forces are respected. In terms of international relations, through your actions and the confidence building measures that you take up. Through science and technology, by sticking to scientific temper. Why? Because science will ask proof, logic, and once that is given, you will gain trust. In society, when you value or when you prefer a certain set of values like honesty, integrity, respect, tolerance, that will create trust and peace in the society. That is a theme. Moving on. New loan origination. See, when loans are not being taken up, it means that the future perception of companies is shaky. They do not understand the growth trajectory of an economy. That's why they don't want to take a risk. And since companies are not taking a risk, even households do not know what kind of income they can expect from jobs. So they will also stop taking loans. So credit growth is a metric of the health of economy. And that's all you need to know from this. Okay, challenges before IAEA after attack. See, if Iran pulls out of the deal, there's no way IAEA can even enter Iran. But right now, that's not the case. What are the challenges? Because the infrastructure is destroyed, surveillance is becoming difficult. The checks and balances which IAEA intends to put on Iran, the infrastructure is damaged, and therefore they do not have any accounting mechanism for how much nuclear material is there in Iran. That is the whole article about. They explain the background, that's why it looks bulkier. Agricultural industry and Indo-US deal. this article. See, the problem with US right now is that US is imposing trade tariffs. So this is leading to trade wars. Literally, US is bullying the world because of the latest policies of the President of the United States, Donald Trump. What used to be a tariff-free regime or duty-free regime, now they are imposing additional duties. In the context of the renegotiations of deals with the different countries, India might also have to negotiate a deal with US, especially in terms of agriculture. The biggest threat that the farmers are witnessing or anticipating is with respect to soybean import, because this soybean import is very important for our poultry industry, and if there are no barriers to entry for produce from the United States into India, the imports will become much more cheaper, because they use mass production techniques in US and they just dump them here. In India, soya or soybean is largely produced in poorer states and poorer districts like Madhya Pradesh. So, what is the homework you need to do? Firstly, understand soybean production. Does it have minimum support price, MSP? Even if it has MSP, is the government actually procuring it? You know what is MSP? MSP is the minimum support price that the government gives as not as a right but as a policy to ensure that farmers are protected. Just because there is an MSP policy, it doesn't mean that it will naturally translate into procurement. There is a policy, but if the need arises and the government thinks it is okay to produce, only then it will procure, sorry, not produce. So, in the context of this article, there are some things that I want you to know. There is something called ethanol blending. Ethanol blending. Going back to that decarbonization agenda, where India wants to become energy Atmanirbhar by 2047. Today, 85% of the oil that we are consuming is coming from elsewhere. India wants to reduce dependence on it. We can't completely replace, right? So what we said is up to 20% of oil should be replaced by blending them with ethanol, which has similar properties. Not only similar properties, it has additional advantage that it will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But the conflict here is, what is the source of this fuel? So here you need to know the concept of ethanol. Ethanol is produced from any carbohydrate source. Okay? But the problem of this carbohydrate source is that it is also a food item. For example, this soybean. I told you that it is used as a feed for the poultry industry. Then you also use it as, like say for example, sugar. Sugarcane production is so resource intensive that it takes a lot of water to produce sugarcane. And what are we ending up with? Ethanol. Is this the best way of addressing our oil needs? That's a question. Therefore, in this context, we have had something called the National Biofuel Policy in 2018. According to this, the target is 20%. in this context, you need to know that there are 4 generations or 4 generations of biofuel. What do you mean by this 4 generations here? 4 levels of sources or how we produce this. 4 different varieties or 4 different technologies involved. For example, first generation is directly from sugarcane, where food is used. Second generation is where you use non-food source. For example, Jatropa. It's a wood-based plant which is used in the production of ethanol. Then you have third generation where you use algae or some genetically modified organism or something to let them produce ethanol. And then in the fourth generation, you have this plus a technology that will actually take out any carbon emissions or any greenhouse gas emissions from this, which makes this entire process a carbon negative, meaning it will actually add, not emit. If not carbon neutral, meaning whatever is emitted will be taken up again. In the process, the net emission will become zero. Right now we are still in the first stage, because you can see in this, in the last 10 years, ethanol blending has increased from nearly 1.5% to 14.6% today. And most of it is coming from food grains only. In the context of the deal with US, today we have farmers who are happy that they are either able to sell it to the market for poultry industry or for biofuel. In the context of what US deal would be like, cheaper imports will be replacing this, and this will threaten the economy of these regions. And that is the moral dilemma that we have. How do we address that? How we address that, we will be seeing in the future, in the coming days. Okay? Okay. The future of urban mobility. Tesla is trying to create an army of unmanned vehicles, driverless cars. How are they doing it? There are some technologies behind it. The most important technology is LiDAR. AI, IoT. See, when we are reading about these technologies in our science and tech classes, just remember this driverless cars technology. In short, a combination of these technologies, explaining these technologies in detail would take some time, so it's beyond the scope of this class. The next time when science and tech classes are going on, or if you are free enough to read this article is about leveraging all these technologies to solve the problem of urban mobility, clean urban mobility. But it also has a social impact. A lot of people, let's say, are depending on cars depending on taxis for their livelihood. What do we do? The larger debate is always like this. If we are replacing human labor, is it right or is it wrong? The larger debate has always been that we always have to encourage technology that takes away pointless human labor. That's fine. That argument is fine. But you should also create an opportunity for people who are depending on it to do something worthwhile. When you don't create that opportunity, it breeds discontent in the society. On one hand, you have technology taking away what you at least have, something to look forward to. An empty mind or an idle mind is a devil's workshop. where should AI ideally start? All these frontier technologies which are disrupting the world, they should ideally start from cleaning your dishes, doing your laundry, actually being house help. Again, there is a moral dilemma there also. What will happen to the bottom rung of the ladder where people are doing all this work, maids, etc.? They will lose employment. Inequality will rise further. So I would rather say go and deploy these technologies in those areas which are completely inhuman, like manual scavenging, public sanitation. That's where AI and robots should first start. That's not happening here. Anyway, coming back to this article, just read about these technologies. Okay. The last article was about Jaws. Jaws is a 50-year-old movie where, long story short, sharks are picturized as monsters killing the people in the movie. It's a blockbuster movie. This article can be used as the influence of pop culture in the mindset of people. Because of this movie, shark population declined by 74% in many pockets, because they feared that they are indeed the monsters they were as picturized in the movie. So what is the role of pop culture media in shaping public perception? You can use this as an example in your essay. Okay, it's also an ethical question. Should filmmakers, artists have a moral responsibility towards society because they have a sense of imagination? That's a question that can be open for ethics. Okay, so that's it for today's articles. It's a mere repetition of whatever we studied in the last few days, but the most important article according to me is this Agri-industry and the India-US deal. So whether you have time for other articles or not, this is must and should. Okay, this and also the first survey, household survey. Okay, anyway, that story will keep on developing, but this story might disappear again, this context might disappear, this data and infographic might disappear. So must read article. Okay, that's it for the day.